All right. Hey, everybody. I got to move out of the way. I always do this wrong when I have someone up and over. So, this is the Easy Coach. We're live tonight. We're returning with Kristin, who we've had on the show before. This is her second session coaching with us, where she has some things she's trying to learn and I'm trying to help. And all of you get to participate, join in, watch us help her ask ask questions. Shadow Fox is hosting us. Thank you, Furrow Key. I see you joined us from Devon. Yeah, nag that boy Devon. I'm trying to get him to schedule our next special show. That's where Kristin found us indirectly as well. And he's being a slouch. So if he's here, I said it first. And if he's not, all the Nash fans can tell him. Yeah, oh snap. All right, so announcements. First, for those of you who have not seen one of our live coaching streams, what we do, what we set out doing, is I invited a couple people. Kristin is one. We'll talk to Mugendra next Monday. Two people, two professionals, to do some what's called longitudinal or long-term coaching, where basically they come on once a month for however long they're into it, and they're getting benefit, maybe 6 months, maybe longer. And we try and help them grow in their career. And so we'll talk a little bit more about Kristin's background by way of introduction in a second. But couple notes. First, when we're doing this style stream, we don't actually use the Q&A widget because audience questions aren't a big part of it. Yeah, it's NVA Hitch. I see. Devon's a flake. I don't know about that, but Devon has been slow to schedule our next session. And I'm excited about it because we have this idea where we're going to bring on an improv artist to teach us improv. So improv is actually a business skill to be able to think creatively and to riff off what your coworkers are suggesting or thinking. And so improv's actually become quite hot in the business world, just like Devon's Buddhism. They're both red hot. So he's an improvisational Buddhist. That's my conclusion. Anyway, moving on. Q&A won't be active tonight. If you have questions or things to add, drop them in chat. But this show is focused on helping Kristin, so that's mostly what we'll do. The second thing is I want to say I have a longtime fan, Racine, who's sometimes in chat, may not be here tonight because she's East Coast, so it's 11, although Kristin's always here. But she's the one who cuts up all these episodes and puts them on YouTube. And our YouTube has been growing like crazy, which I'm super happy about. So all of you who've shared the YouTube or who are watching us on YouTube, thank you for that. And now I want to do a plug. Shadow Fox will be all about it. She'll put up the Discord link because Kristin is super prepared. And I dropped her agenda for tonight's coaching session in Discord. So you can join our Discord and see it there. But the thing I really want to say is Kristin's really investing in the mentorship because she's gone and thought through exactly what she'd like to talk about. And if you are going to have a mentor or a coach and you want to get the value out of that, you need to do the work. And I just want to say she's over-indexing on the work. So if next Monday's guest, Mugendra, happens to be here, and I suspect knowing him, he's not, so we can tweak him on that when he gets on next Monday about how he missed this prompt. But he can show me up and be wrong, teach me how I'm wrong and have an agenda too. So anyway, with that all said, Kristin works in healthcare. She's a product manager. She has an agenda. The first part of the agenda was for her to report out on her homework because good mentorships come with homework. So take it away.
All right. Thought I was hearing a little bit of an echo, but it went away. So I found this app.
And can everyone just let me check chat? Can you hear her? I want to make sure it's coming through on stream.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good. Yep, keep going.
Okay, I wanted a way to track towards personal goals that I've been creating because that was part of our homework for
Yep.
me. And I wanted to be able to customize it. So I was looking for some apps. I found one. I've been using the free version of it, where you can either dock into goals they already have, or you can create your own. So I created my own, and I will say we set this up for me to track up to 20 times, but that was if I were not coming back here until September 1st. So I haven't
Fair.
reached my 20,
Fair.
but it hasn't actually been as long.
It hasn't been a month. That's true.
Yeah. So I'll just pull this up and give you my little report out here. So I categorized this goal as speak less because that was like in general something I wanted to work towards, of course, with a little bit more reasoning behind that. So we had said the goal would be wait 5 minutes before speaking or responding once a day, and in hopes for me to give others the opportunity to respond, to come to their own conclusions, to be okay with just holding back. And kind of one of the things that I've discovered through this has been it helps me get a gauge on how much value I'm really contributing. So when I stop, if I really needed to bring that up or no one else did and it really was important, I'll bring it up or I'll follow up with someone after. But there's been a couple of times where I just held off, never addressed it, and it really didn't need to be addressed. And it's kind of helping me hone in on being able to tell before I start speaking, like whether or not I'm really going to be providing value by bringing this up in this meeting at this time. So I've done it 14 times, which according to my goal is 55% progress. And I feel pretty good about that because, let's see, I think we
Shouldn't that be 70%? Am I just like missing? It was 20 times, or did you set up more than 20?
I think I set it up for 20. So
Don't worry about it. Anyway.
I'm not about to do the math because that's what the app's for.
Perfect.
And then after the last stream, my husband kindly suggested that I add another piece to my homework. Yeah, I know, right? He said I should work on being okay with taking a minute to kind of think before I speak, which you'd think is like a natural thing to do. But I think when you're a verbal processor, you like to fill in those gaps and kind of help other people participate in conversation. And sometimes you just fill in the gaps to fill in the gaps. So I've also been tracking that, and that has been not as often because it's intended for those moments where maybe you need to make sure you're going to respond appropriately, or that you're not just filling in the awkward silence. And those moments don't necessarily happen as often. So I kind of set that to try to do that a couple times a week, but not necessarily daily.
Okay.
I've been able to do that as well. So yeah, I've done that 8 times since we met.
Nice.
That I've tracked, yeah. So I feel pretty good about it. I also enjoy that, like this, I'm able to like journal how I'm feeling, and it has this whole thing where you can like gauge like.
What's the app?
I don't actually know how to pronounce it.
Spell it.
Remente.
Okay, Remente. So I have no idea how it's pronounced, but I love the fact, for everyone who's learning, right, all of chat, it's totally fine, and everybody who listens downstream, it's completely fine to assist your own improvement. So a million ways to do that, right? We don't have to talk about it, but like self-discipline and burning yourself out mentally is not nearly as good as being prompted.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And you can set this up to give you reminders, and you can schedule what days you want the reminders and when, which is really cool. And so I have it go off in the morning just as a kind of grounding moment for me every morning before I start my day, to be intentional about those things.
Oh,
so, yeah.
You used one of my favorite words, by the way. Thank you. You didn't know. Intentional. And it's one of my favorite words just because so many people aren't about so many things. They just bump along through life, and they don't have those prompts that pull you out just for that second to say, okay, what am I trying to do today? What's important to me today? And just that little prompt. So I have to share with you, I'm old school and lazy, and so my prompt is a meeting in Outlook that goes off at 8:30 every morning that reminds me, but I see a little reminder on my phone like, hey, I'm supposed to do this. And my reminder, which is actually related to what we do here, it's super abbreviated. It says MG and ampersand MFT. And it's how can I do the most good today and have the most fun today? So that's like my prompt. But being intentional is awesome. So well done.
So how long have you been using that prompt, and does it still have the same, like, I don't know what the word is.
Impact.
Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've become immune. To be fair, you do need to change up the prompt, or it needs to be more aggressive. Because a lot of times I get in, I'm like, oh, look, I have 6 reminders that have popped up. Dismiss all, and it doesn't work.
Yeah,
But I love that you
notifications,
called me
sorry.
on it, and Shadow loves that you called me on it too. So that's
Well, it's just, I mean, it's a good question, and I think it's important to be able to switch those things up. So right now, this is working for me, and at some point, it might need to be something else.
yeah, freshness matters for sure. The freshness of the prompt. All
Yeah,
right,
so yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying
so
that a lot.
is the homework working for you? Like, have you noticed any impact
Yeah.
for it, or what impact? What's it driving for you?
Well, so I think I mentioned in the last stream that one of my other goals is, like, long-term goals, is to just use data better. I think we asked chat to
Mm-hmm.
help give any input on that. And so one of the things it's doing is it's meeting that goal, because I can see I'm being disciplined and checking it and going in and marking it and, like, maybe journaling, documenting how I feel or whatever. And then being able to see, like, the progress bar and seeing how far along I've come compared to how easy it is for me to wait longer, or, am I getting better at that? And I think I am. I'm thinking about it more often, so I do feel like it's helping me to be more valuable in the conversations that I'm a part of. And I just feel good that it's something I can. It's not just, oh, I know I'm working towards this general thing of, like, getting better at life. Like, like, trying to make work not suck. Like, that's one of the goals, right, for everybody. And so it's nice to kind of see some sort of data. It's just energizing for me to feel like I'm making progress. Like, I did really well as a traditional student, and that's because it had a very clear structure. I knew exactly what I had to do to get what I wanted out of it, in the timeline and everything that was, expected of me. And that's just not the way it is in the real world. You have to set up your own structure if you want or need those little milestones to help you feel like you're getting traction. Like, that's helping me feel like I'm making forward motion and keeping me from kind of swirling with my thoughts, which is good.
Nice.
So I would definitely think it's helping. So yeah, so that was one part of my homework, and that kind of stemmed out of our subtle leadership conversation. So another thing you asked me to do, not technically as part of my homework, was to, like, observe other leaders and
Yep.
recognize, like, qualities. So we had a meeting, and our CIO came in, and he asked a question. He waited till everyone else was done asking questions. We were doing, like, a demo. He asked a question. The answer, it was, have you considered these things in AI? And the answer was, no, we haven't considered how to bring AI into this specific piece of technology, but we should. And he followed it up, like, he let the silence linger a little, which was uncomfortable, and I wanted to fix it, but I didn't have an answer. So I just stayed quiet, and he followed it up with, don't let this question change your roadmap. Like, stick with your roadmap, but, like, keep this in mind as we're planning down the road. And I just appreciated it so much, because people's reaction is to scramble and try to, like, well, this is what he said, so it's clearly the most important thing. And I can't stand that, and it drives me nuts. And so seeing him, the way he asked the question, he waited, he asked the question, he let it linger a little uncomfortably, and then followed it up with, like, basically saying, you guys need to be thinking about these things, but, like, I'm not telling you to like, jump ship right now or anything. And I thought that was a good example of subtle leadership, and, like, just being very clear with his intent. It was to, like, spur on motivation and innovation, not necessarily to change the actionable items we were doing.
That's awesome. So let me comment on a couple things real quick. First, chat's asking what did I mean by intentionality? And at least what I meant is just something that causes you to stop operating on autopilot and to step back to that part of your brain that thinks about not what am I doing, but what's important to me or what do I want to be doing. So I may be writing a paper, I may be responding to email, I may be sitting in a meeting. It takes you up to the meta game of what should I be doing in this meeting? What am I trying to accomplish? And so I think Kristin's doing a good job putting herself in the meta game, not only of I want to be a full participant in the meeting, but I want to be someone who interacts in that meeting in a specific way I'm working on. And that's her being intentional. And so that's what I meant, chat. Second thing is, with your practice sessions, just as a reminder, you'll, even though if we don't call those homework again, the book by Martin Lanick, and now I'm blanking on the name, The Leader Habit, has science that says you have to do this. It's either 50 or 60 times for it to become ingrained and really change your long-term behavior.
Yeah,
So
I believe that.
you're on the path. So yay. And then I love that you're studying leaders that you see. Like that's fantastic. And so good job extracting bonus input. And that's something everyone can do, but it's something you can obviously keep doing because other people lead other ways. You did say something in there about silence, both something you're working on based on your husband's suggestion and what you saw him do. And one thing that I'm bad at and working on is being comfortable with silence. An old sales trick is make the offer, or a negotiator's trick is make the offer and then just sit.
It's so hard.
And yeah, be able to be comfortable. Like if you, and we talked in other times here on the channel, we've talked about the exercise where you lay down in the mall or and let people look at you weird.
No thanks.
Not
I
your.
heard you tell Devin you did that. I'm like, no way. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was. Oh well, um, it was a
No, I think
challenge.
it's awesome.
It was a
I was like
challenge.
way too self conscious for that.
Yeah, well, that same thing happens with silence, filling the silence,
Yeah.
and being willing to tolerate the discomfort of silence. And it's weird because if you were to look back at a film of that meeting, what seemed like eternity was probably 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's weird how painful 5 seconds can be.
Yeah.
So,
Another thing that I learned that has happened maybe two of the times that I did this, where I stayed quiet and I didn't bring it back up, and then somebody in the room ended up asking me, "Did you have any thoughts?" It seems like maybe you got some thoughts. I'm like, what am I doing with my face? I'm telling
mm-hmm.
them something, so maybe that's another homework I need to work on. But it was just interesting to, I don't know, maybe they just expected that I had an opinion because I'm an opinionated person. I'm not sure why they asked me that, but it was just neat to see that I didn't have to interject myself. And like, it was nice to be asked for an opinion versus just always offering it up.
Yeah, completely. I couldn't agree more on that because while you may not have reached the whole room that way, if someone asks you for an opinion, then they're ready to listen. They're curious. You'd much rather be asked than to tell, I think.
Definitely.
Because people are open and receptive and curious at that point, and they're in a place to learn, not reject. Let's see. We got a long comment from Chalupa Whale here. That's a good call about the silence. I was in a meeting with my director last week and made a suggestion, and then there was silence as he was thinking, and I was like, wow, he thinks I'm dumb, and it's a terrible idea, but it turned out to be the opposite. Yes. It's a skill. Farouk, you must have joined just after we started. He asked, what industry are you in? Kristin is in the healthcare industry and is a product manager. So yay on homework. We talked about, so something chat doesn't know is about a week after the show, one of the other coaches in chat came and suggested to me, hey, it might help Kristin because she's working on how she interacts to rewatch the video of the coaching session and watch how she interacts, albeit this is a different medium. So I didn't give her all of that context. I just said, hey, have you considered rewatching the show? Or something like that. And she quite honestly said, and I get it, oh, I was avoiding that. I don't love seeing myself on film, right? Like I didn't want to get into critiquing myself, which I totally understand. Because I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and I have two screens up that have me on it. And what I know is my hands are all over the place. I don't know that I have any Italian blood, but the stereotype of the busy Italian hands, I have that disease big time. And in fact, when we made the channel icons, because affiliates only have one sub icon, because I've never pushed growing my subs, I had to choose between the blue shirts and waving my hands. So the next one that comes out will be me doing this, probably. So anyway, too many hands. The point for you, though, is how did that go? What did you get out of rewatching it?
So the first thing I got was I didn't need to be so worried. It
Great.
wasn't as bad as I expected. I was definitely more nervous in the beginning. I would say
Okay.
makes sense.
Yep.
Because I don't do this sort of thing.
Yep.
And I where my husband's advice for follow-up homework came from. So, no, it was good. It was actually probably the most interesting thing I learned was it kind of ties with the idea of the emotional distance, or I can't remember what the word is in decisive that they use, but where you can kind of separate yourself. And I'm a very emotional person, and so watching again, I actually interpreted and heard some of the things you said just a little bit differently than while I was processing in conversation. And it was nothing major. It was just ever so slightly, but it was just neat to recognize that.
That is cool.
In action, because I've read about it, and it's probably true, but to be able to just remember what I was feeling and how I was like interpreting the conversation, and then watching it later and realizing it was just a teeny bit shifted. So that was pretty neat.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that worked. I'm glad you got value out of it. I want to take a second and thank Banhammer sub. Thank you for the sub. Appreciate you also being here, having a good time. And yeah, I'm lucky to have a few of my Twitch compatriots who drop by. So, well, let's jump into your new agenda. I don't want to go all history. So go ahead and step through to what you want to talk about next.
Sure. So I read the book Humble Inquiry that you recommended. I would recommend this to everybody in chat. This is a very short book and really, really powerful stuff in here. It makes it seem like it would be so easy. Like, why isn't everybody doing this? But it's extremely difficult, which is one of the quotes that I want to talk about. So a couple of things that stuck out to me that I wanted to discuss with you. One was around this idea of the power of open questions, which I understand that, an open-ended question. But it talked about how the timing of that can be so crucial to it being considered humble inquiry or not, or to the person maybe accepting it. And I was just curious if you had any thoughts or knowledge around that. I'm trying to understand maybe ways to gauge when is it the right time. And I don't know if maybe we should give chat a little bit of backup on like what this book is about, but to help them understand what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have you rephrase the question just a sec. So, Meme Dude, thank you for the sub. So this book, hold it up again, real quick, because then I have to pull up. So this is Edgar Schein, Humble Inquiry. It was recommended to me The key is the subtitle, right? The gentle art of asking rather than telling, because we're a telling-based culture. And this was recommended. Oh, there's Devin Nash. For anyone, we were just talking about you, Devin, earlier.
Saying really kind things about
Yeah,
you.
that's right. That's right. Good to have you here. Um, now he's gonna be wondering, like, oh God, what'd they say? I said, when are we doing our improv act? It's on you to schedule. So, uh, all right. Um, so anyway, going back to Edgar Schein in this book, Hummel Inquiry was recommended by Ken Meyer when we did the show. Ken's the professional interim CEO, and he recommended that when he drops into a situation as an interim CEO, he needs to lead through asking questions, not by telling, because even though he's the CEO, he can't really come in and tell, and that's also not his style. So with that, what again was you have four questions I know on this. What was the first one?
Yeah. So the first one is around using open questions and timing them appropriately. And so one of
Tying
the
or
ways
timing?
timing, like
Timing, time. Okay.
when you ask it, yeah,
Yeah.
that it can have a huge impact asking at the right moment, or
Yes.
maybe even allowing silence, or whatever it is. And I was just curious, is this something that you have exercised, or you have any recommendations on how to tell, or any like? I would love to have a little more context around that because I can see it being really powerful, and I don't feel like maybe it just takes experience, but I don't feel like I would just know when to ask those right questions.
Yeah. There's so many things there, and it goes with your other challenge, which is, and it's my challenge too. We're alike in this. Um, if you're going to ask a question, closed-ended questions get short answers. And so those aren't as hard for you and me. Open-ended questions have the problem that now the other person's going to start talking, and how long can you wait? Um, like how long can you listen before you feel the need to speak again? It's like a version of the silence because both you and I like to speak. And so one part of that is just being aware that whenever you ask it, it won't be authentic if you then don't listen for a while. And you can clarify or redirect if you have to, but a lot of it is, can you focus on the person and really listen to what they have to say? Um, as for when to ask it, I think open-ended questions are good. Like, I wouldn't over-index on that. I would ask them whenever you're honestly curious. I think the book talks about a lot. You have to be uh, truly curious,
Yeah,
and
that ties directly in with what. So I told you I have a personal challenge that I wanted that
mhm.
came out of this, and it was about practicing that natural curiosity, but in a one-to-one sort of setting.
Okay.
So because a lot of times I will ask questions to help others ask questions, or I will ask questions to help people feel comfortable starting conversation in a group
Hmm.
setting. Or, and I don't necessarily like admitting this, but I'll ask questions to sound or feel important, like I
Right.
know what I'm doing or
Yeah.
asking. And so I think that part of what this book is talking about, it is that your intent has to be true curiosity, or it's going to come through. People can pick up on that. So practicing that in just being interested in what someone's doing, not because you need them to do something for you or follow up, not as a means to an end or to get the job done, but literally just to be building that relationship. And so I just think that would be a good exercise. I think I do this somewhat already, but I'd like to practice it a little bit more with like patience, because sometimes it is hard to listen, especially because I work with a lot of technical people and I'm not that person. So I have to work hard to listen and understand a lot of times. But that's like a very unique skill for a lot of people in my type of position to develop, is that ability to kind of translate, to listen, take it in, and understand enough to be able to kind of facilitate those conversations. So that's my personal challenge for this week. I'd like to maybe once a week just make sure I'm carving out time to just be intentionally curious and talk to someone and get to know someone maybe that's not on my project or my product, to exercise that, I think.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think chat may not think, or it's unusual. Um, and yeah, Alinity, sorry, I'm going to take a break. Alinity, I saw you followed a few minutes ago. I didn't get to call you out. Thank you for following. Alinity, assuming it's the same Alinity, which I would think it is, streamed at the Twitch Prime event we did back on Prime Day. And so she's connected me on Twitter, I think, and has popped in here. So it's great to see you again. And we have Monkeyism giving out tier 1 subs to folks. Yep, it's the real Alinity. So welcome to the stream. It's good to see you. Yeah, we're not going to get in. So one thing I got to note, because it's going to come up real quick. I don't talk about Twitch or Amazon policy here. Alinity was involved in a situation with Twitch policy that I was not involved in. I'm certainly aware of it, but let's not discuss that here. She's a viewer here and a great streamer outside of that context. So she's welcome here, particularly if she wants to hear what we're doing. So, sweet. Anyway, answering your question, and I appreciate you letting me interrupt for a minute. Practicing that type of curiosity for chat and for you, it would seem like it's strange that you have to practice being curious. I have to do the same thing. And is it, at least in my case, like, am I just that self-centered? I don't think so. But I'm just not, I don't normally quiz people. Like, I came, and you and I are from the same place. I won't over disclose Kristin's background, but we're both from Ohio. And at least in my background in Ohio, you don't pry into people's business. Like, if they don't want to volunteer stuff, you don't pry. So I have to practice asking people questions, because my worldview has been, well, if they wanted me to know, they'd tell me. And so going beyond, hey, how was your weekend? Oh, good. Or how you doing? Fine, thanks, which are not real questions. You know. So let's see. I want to make sure we don't have problems in chat over stuff that's not related. So let's just one more time for chat. Let it go. And our moderators. Okay, Shadow says she's got it, and good job, Shadow. Take care of it. So the problem with having famous guests, right? So that's what we'll.
I know who Alinity is. That's like, yeah.
Yeah, but she's welcome here, because she's a friend, and we had a good time together. She did a great job on Prime Day. The rest of the stuff, I know the whole. By the way, I know the whole backstory, chat. I can't go into it, but I stick by my statement. She's welcome here. And then we'll move on for it. I'm not mentioning it more, no matter what chat says. So.
Come on,
for that,
chat.
yeah,
Pull your crap together.
Yeah, all right. So coming back to your question, I think it's great. Practice it. I try it in like the lunchroom or a context like that. I just try and ask people about their lives as a way of practicing it. Like just,
Yeah.
and then for your question though of open-ended questions and how to time them, I think anytime you have a sincere question where you'd like to hear more. And it's not distracting people. Like if you're in a short meeting where everybody wants to go, you don't want to get somebody talking about their life story. But if it's a sincere business question, I think to the point of that book, the world asks too few questions and does too much telling. And so I would just ask. Don't be quite as hesitant. A little bit like you were hesitant watching your video. I think you don't need to be hesitant here. Yeah, like try it a few times. Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we get through a little bit. What were your other
Yeah.
things from the book? We can go a little
Well,
over
so
too.
I mean, my agenda is totally open.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So okay. So anyway, so the quote that I pulled that I really liked, that I thought was impactful, and thought maybe would be some good discussion. It's I'm just gonna read it if that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the quote is: So even though humble inquiry can be defined as an attitude based on your curiosity, asking questions to which you do not know the answers, the implementation is complex because either you're not sure what you should be curious about, or your question can be misunderstood. So those are the two ways that he's kind of breaking down how this gets really complex. Like you were saying, it seems like it'd be easy and natural for us to be curious. But I think that that's true, and especially in the workplace, because sometimes I want to get to know people, or I want to better understand the landscape of, the planning or the strategy that we're going to get into. And when you're first starting this, it's hard to know what questions to ask. And I'm probably known for letting my developers know, like when I'm problem solving with them, I'll just say, like, this may be a dumb question. Have we done this? Have we looked at this? Like, that's me trying to learn and understand and, like, keep up with the stuff that's usually just kind of over my head. But when it comes to, like, strategy, I do find that can be really challenging, especially if you're talking with higher up execs, because you don't want to say something that might infer you didn't get told things you should have been told already, and throw somebody else under the bus. Like, why is this person in this meeting when they haven't even been educated on thus far, whatever. So you want to make sure you're using their time valuably, and that you're not asking, like I say, there's never a dumb question, but sometimes there are dumb questions. So like making sure I'm not asking dumb questions. And so that is a challenge. And then also the thing about being misunderstood is huge. And I've found that happens to me a lot. And I'm trying to figure out why and what it is about the way that I'm talking. So I've talked with a couple people to get a little feedback on it, and see people that were in different meetings with me where I've seen my question get misunderstood.
Yeah.
So it sounds like an idea, and maybe you can give me your opinion, would be, I'll give you an example, so this is a little easier to understand. So there was a conversation in a meeting, and there's been all this work done, there's been like a pilot done, and all this stuff that really is going to fall into my work down the line. And I haven't been a part of those, and I asked, I wanted to know, where did this come from? Because in my head, in my opinion, it should have fallen as part of our strategy plan and not been done before. Because now knowledge sharing is going to have to, it's just going to be a little bit difficult. So I wanted to know where the ask came from. I knew who it was coming from, and I kept getting like roundabout answers. And I don't know if it's because they didn't think I needed to know, or because they felt like it wasn't something they wanted to address in a meeting or whatever. So when I had an opportunity, and I just straight up said, like, this might not be the right place to ask this question, but I just wanted to understand why this is, why did this happen in this order? And everyone got, not everyone, 3 people got like, they were like trying to console me, like give me an answer to make me happy or make me feel good about it. And I'm like, this isn't impacting me personally. I'm asking the question because I see a potential risk or a gap that I think we need to make sure we're addressing, so that we're continuing to work towards the right goal. And we're not just doing this because someone else said it needed to be done because this needed to be done, and maybe now we're going to come up and it's not even going to be the right solution because we didn't understand what the intent was behind it from the beginning. And so I was just like, gosh, like, why do people feel, a lot of times that happens, and I don't know if it's just because I'm a very expressive person. Somebody else in the room, the person that actually had the answer, was the only one that didn't respond that way. And she's a director, so maybe she just is used to that. But she was able to answer it, and I kind of followed up with that, so that worked out. But I just don't know why my questions get taken as if I'm so personally invested that I'm like gonna shatter if someone doesn't tell me or give me a good enough answer, or like fix it. And I'm not looking for perfect answers. I'm totally content to talk about the problems. But it
Okay.
seems like everyone always wants to like defend whatever it is and not be willing to necessarily open that door.
Well, uh, sorry, were you finished?
I'm just rambling at this
Okay.
point, so yeah.
All right. Uh, so there's a few things in there, and I think um, the whole dance of human interaction is so delicate. People read in your faces. You just have to think about your significant other in any context, and that's for all of chat as well, any family relation, where I always joke one person says hello and the other person says, "What did you mean by that?" So a little bit behind that, though, is reality, where people have these loops running in their head where they're not taking questions at face value. And the reason they don't is, of course, they've been taught some people manipulate with questions and some people lead with questions. And so they're thinking, what's the question behind the question? And I think you're asking honest questions, but not everyone, they're not taking them as dishonest, but they're probably wondering about them. The other thing I can't know is if other ways you interact in your workplace, maybe giving people the idea that you're invested or fragile. I would doubt it based on what you're saying, but you are so people focused and very concerned about how the teams are interacting and people being included. It may be that you're conveying a little bit of that, a little bit of I need
Emotion.
answers or emotion. And that also, by the way, being very candid, is going to be stereotyped onto you as a woman, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
like
right.
and that's not fair. It is true. So you can manage that though uh, by how you behave over time. One of the things that I've been thinking about in how you're approaching our coaching and what you're doing, and some of the other questions in your agenda, if we get to them. I love how fast you want to improve and how diligent you are. There is a role for a little bit of pacing. There's this joke about the person who gets sent out to a training class, and you can predict that the day they come back from training class, like whatever they learned, they're then going to try. Which is good in a sense, but if it's too much, can be an issue. So,
Yes, we could jump into that topic if you
well,
want. Makes sense.
yeah, we can do that. We don't have to go there yet, though. You had a couple more questions on this, and we're doing a good thing on asking questions. And chat was super interested. Chat like engaged right away with asking good questions is really hard. So I think what I would say is there is no perfect recipe for questions. It depends some on the audience and some on your relationship to them. And so any skill you want to practice, you have to factor in who are the other people. And to some of this, it may be best to take your questions offline. So, like where you weren't getting a good answer, a different way to have approached that situation would be to say, hey, I have a couple questions about this. This may not be the place, but is there anyone, like, who would be the right person for you to follow up or pull someone away after? And going to your point, I love for chat, Kristin promised when she asked if I would select her to be mentor that she would be super open and transparent. And I love that she's done that because she was candid to say sometimes she asks questions to look smart. And we all do that. It's less rude to say like ask a intelligent question than to make a pronouncement like, well, I have the right answer to this or something pompous. You can but we all do it. We all want to display our knowledge. And so what I would get at here is if you take stuff offline, you get around a little bit of that. And yeah, chat's back at it now that we there. So you'll be able to read the stream chat later and see what the questions were and the advice on questions because it's a super hard topic. I don't have a perfect prescription for you. I think the fact that you now have an awareness loop running about the reaction to your questions will let you tune it.
Yeah.
And I do think honest questions will win through. Um, and being direct about real things that need to be asked, at least in my company, we like people who ask the question that needs to be asked. And it sounds like your company has pretty good tolerance for being direct. So, what else did you have about humble inquiry?
Um, well, the last piece, which maybe, I don't know if we want to get into it because I'm kind of excited to talk about the other topic we've
Okay.
started, but it was how to learn more of my own biases. So it talks about in order to do this, you really need to understand like how your perception is impacted. And I think that that's really hard to do. It went through this whole, observe, react, judge, and intervene, talking through what all those mean, and I get all of that stuff, but I still feel like, and maybe that is it, and I'm just trying to make it into like one small little sentence to understand it, but I'm just trying to think like, how can you actively work towards understanding your bias? Everyone has one, right? And I
Yeah.
think that it's great to acknowledge that. It's just I'm trying to figure out how I can acknowledge I have it. I'd like to figure out exactly what it is.
Well, our biases, like you can acknowledge them but not unearth them. Yeah, let's go ahead and table that because we could do a whole show on unconscious bias and all the biases that each of us have. And you're right.
Okay.
Trying to figure those out would be if you. I wanted to get to your other topic that you wanted new coaching on. So let's do that.
Okay. Cool. That sounds good. I will move into that. So, okay. So this has been on my mind as well for a while. My question is kind of on how to appropriately implement learnings. So you were just talking about how I might be a little aggressive and trying to grow quickly, and that's probably true. But I mean, I think it is important to practice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to. I went through. Part of it was in preparation for tonight. Part of it is a new exploration I want to do when I'm reading books. Is to go through and like I kind of like speed read and skim for the things that stuck out to me, and then make notes on them. So like I did a bunch of that on Humble Inquiry, just reminders like to be curious, practice here and now humility. Like what are the different types of humility, just so I can go back and quickly outline. So then I'm going to go to implement this in work, and maybe one thing or two things are going to stick out in my brain at least for a while. And I always like to make it a part of my, just who I am and the way that I'm growing. But a lot of the stuff that I'm reading, particularly around leadership, is really challenging because I'm not technically, a leader. Like I
Yeah.
mean, I'm leading a lot of things, but I'm not in that position yet, and so I do have to be careful, especially because it's not like Bridgewater. Like I don't know if you've read about or heard about Bridgewater with their whole policy of like, everything's extremely honest. Everybody can say anything to everybody. That's not the way most work cultures
No.
are, and so I'm trying to figure out how to implement some of the things that I'm learning.
Okay.
Obviously, it's partially just shifting my mindset. I know that that's a part of it, but when it comes to implementing, especially leadership,
Well, let me jump in on that. So, first thing I would say is you are a leader. You don't have a leadership position, but at least at Amazon, and I think this is right, we would say everyone is a leader in certain contexts. So I do get that you were referring to not holding an official leadership position, but product managers are leaders. And in fact, there's two types of leadership authority. There's positional authority and there's influence authority. And what you were saying is you don't have a lot of positional authority. Although,
right,
even there, being a product manager is a type of positional authority. It just isn't a hierarchical position.
right,
So that's a lot of exceptions. One of the things we've talked about because I have other execs or managers in chat and in the community, there's this illusion that hierarchical authority makes everyone do what you want, and it's not true. Maybe if you're like standing over someone right at that instant, if you're being like, pick up the pencil, that you have very direct authority, but everything else people interpret, and they leave the meeting and they decide what's important. And really all position does is kind of amp up your influence, but beyond that it's just giving like a louder voice to your influence. So they really are the same thing. And maybe again this is not true in a something like the military. Even there, I'm guessing we have probably some military vets here. um it's weird.
Are you hearing that feedback?
Yeah,
I
it's like
keep hearing something.
crickets. Yeah, there's like feedback that we haven't had. So if that keeps coming, I'll come up with something to do about it. But it hasn't happened much until just the last few seconds. Anyway, for your type of situation, you are a leader, and Chad agrees. But the first thing I would say is you don't have to test all your leadership at work. I don't know what your other leadership contexts are, but you can test things at home. You can test them in social setting, whether that's church or a club or whatever. I know you have kids. You could test it with teachers or their circumstances. So one way to avoid overtaxing or overstepping at work is to divide up your practice arenas a little bit, and decide I'm going to practice this skill. We are getting feedback. That's new.
I don't know if that's my mic.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I'll lean back a little, and we'll see. If she's using a speaker, make sure she's listening through the headphones only. Yeah, I think she is. We haven't had the feedback problem much in 2 sessions, so I'm not sure where it came from. Anyway,
So dissecting. What did
yeah,
you say?
dividing things up, giving different arenas, and deciding I'm going to practice this one at home and this one at work. Or maybe if you work on multiple projects with multiple teams, you can separate the practice a little bit.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I was going to tease chat and say, mark now, at the rate Kristin's working on improving herself, because she's reading, she's taking notes, she's speed reading, she's practicing, she comes to coaching. She probably does 10 things that don't involve Easy Coach. You're going to see her in the top 500 CEOs at some point, but you got to keep it. You don't burn yourself out. You don't have to do it all this year.
Yeah. No, I get that. I guess. So I think where this question is stemming from a lot is because a lot of the change that I see needed, wanted by the team, it needs to happen at the top level. I mean, I can do so much with my team and help encourage them and build like for instance, running a retrospective with my team. That's fun for me. It's my favorite meeting, and it takes time to get people to share transparent feedback and to be honest within that group. But you can get to that point and build that within your team, and then as soon as it requires someone to speak up in front of a leader or bringing that to the table, it just won't happen.
Right.
And so things I'm practicing with them, I would like to see working, and it's just how do you facilitate that change, right? Coaching up is not going to work unless the person wants it, and it just feels really awkward. I don't know if you've had any experience with that, but so I guess it's just kind of a lot of this stuff is around leadership, and so there's things that I can do and implement, and I'm hoping that it helps open opportunities maybe for other people to take hold of them, but I don't ever want to cross the boundaries, and I really like this idea of being able to have difficult conversations. And one-on-one, I think that happens pretty easily. So maybe I just focus on that. But
Maybe. So I had a question. My number one coaching insight, thinking about you, um, and how hard you're working on self improvement, was, and I don't know how to, like, I could try and ask you a lot of leading questions to figure this out. I'm gonna go really direct, which is, are you killing it on your direct job?
yeah,
And the reason I ask that is extra credit doesn't count if you it's not like school where extra credit can make up for a bad grade. Extra
right,
credit in work is only extra credit. So if you have a good grade, now you become awesome. But if you're
yeah,
missing something, and so what I was thinking about is, you're so focused on people, and you told us honestly you don't actually care that much about the type of work or the project or the company. The danger you run into when I think about having you on my team is, okay, I guess I'm going to be blunt here, and I don't
no,
know,
go ahead. I think I
is
know where you're going because I've had this conversation
are
with
you
myself.
are you more overhead, we'll say, for the manager in terms of being full of bonus ideas and suggestions than you are
Right.
value?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's actually a couple of weeks ago, I had to remind myself. I was just like, maybe I use language I won't use on the string for you, but I really need to, like, I need to do what I'm here to do extremely well, beyond well, before I can have any impact on any of this. If I'm not doing my job right, then I mean, I'm not promoting the rest of the team or helping the leadership. So whatever I do needs to be making life better for all these people, including investing in the product. So yeah, like I wouldn't say like, oh, I wanted to be in healthcare. I'm really passionate about healthcare, but that's what I'm in, and I get really into the work. So I'm not really that concerned about that. Because I am a little bit of a perfectionist in that area. So I yeah, the extra stuff is the extra stuff, but a lot of this, what I'm working towards, is culture and people oriented, and I'm able to apply it. That's why I
Yeah.
like what I'm
Yeah.
doing. That's why I'm in this position, because it's a very natural fit for
Well, that's
me to
good.
be able to apply the things that I'm passionate about. But you're right, and I'm very conscious of that. But at this point, I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
What I am
Because you do have
concerned
to,
about is
so you think you are killing your work. Like, just
I
on a,
do.
as far as you
Yeah,
know or
I mean,
believe, you would honestly say, looking in the mirror, for getting any of the bonus stuff, you're a strong performer on kind of your assigned day to day tasks.
I would love to say that about myself, but I've been asking people for feedback,
Uh huh.
honest feedback, and to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing, or more. And so yeah, I'm keeping tabs on that, and
And results
I
are
do
good,
feel
or what have you
yeah,
got?
yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah. I mean,
So if that's true, let me just continue the thought. If that's true, then for all the other stuff you want to do that take leadership position, I think you have to talk to the leaders and ask some permission. What I mean is, you can get some of their endorsement to say, I believe, hey, I'm I feel like I'm pretty on top of my work. If I'm not, let me know.
mhm,
But assuming I am, um, I'd also like to work on our postmortems, or I'd also like to work on this other thing. How is that? Can I do that? Or
yeah,
uh, if I did that, what way would work for you? And by the way, for chat, I think when I knocked my mic upside down earlier, it loosened something. And so, yeah, there was something loose that I think I fixed, and that killed the echo problem. So, yay. Yay, tech. Anyway, what I'd like to do, oh, and then I say it and it's back. Um, uh, anyway, uh, I think ask for some of that permission, ask for the space, and that should help.
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, yeah. So I have done that a little bit. Like I got approached to help lead like a kind of like a culture committee within the space. Talked to my manager about that. She recommended I be working with this person and maybe meeting with them regularly, which I am having one-to-ones with them. So I've just kind of been making sure I have that buy-in, and then we actually just had some skip level one-to-ones, which was super exciting for me because I don't get a lot of that time with my VP. And he prefaced it really, really great, asked some really good questions. It started out with him asking me to be as transparent as I was comfortable being. And so I asked him if he was ready. And it was a really good conversation. And his advice, I asked him, like, what can I do, to better execute your vision for what we're doing? What would be your advice to me right now? And he said, I've offered to do like one-to-ones monthly or whatever with anybody that approaches me and asks me for it, and nobody has approached me. So if you're serious about doing this and helping like shape our culture here, do that. Like, I don't know that I can like grant monthly one-to-ones, but like ask for it and let's start to like talk and have meetings. I'm like,
And I
so
I would say that's very true, by the way. I talk all the time about how um, very few people approach senior leaders with reasonable requests, not with lazy requests like, oh, I just want a half hour of your time for no reason, but with a well formed request. If I want to work on this thing and I need you to be bought in, and could I have some of your time and I won't waste it? And then you obviously already, because of the way you work with me, you come with an agenda. Would you come, I'm sure with that, you would come with a clear agenda. And most leaders really
yeah,
appreciate that. And so I think I think you're on the right course, and just let that develop a little bit though, because he'll give you some input, or she, it's a he, right? Yeah, he'll give you some
yeah,
input, but he'll also start talking to others about what he's doing with you. Like his other leaders will hear about it, and then sadly, in our hierarchical society, they'll all be curious why, uh, like, what do you know that they don't? And it it just takes a little bit. It's like throwing a rock in a pond. You've got to let those ripples spread. But I would say for everyone in chat, and we've talked about this book before. I know Kristin's heard me talk about it. There's this book called Rejection Proof, which is all about um, not allowing yourself to be uh, rejected, like the ways not to be rejected, and to be willing to make bold asks. And if you want those asks, if you make those asks, you'd be surprised what you can get a yes to. And so I think you're on the right course, and it just takes a little while for that then to ripple out. And I would say pace it, like ask people for things, but remember he has a million things on his mind, and don't ever pace that, but then also remember to ask how you can help. And those two
right.
things, I talk about this all the time, like the magic recipe for moving up at work. Be good at what you're doing, ask what more you can do it, suggest what you'd like to be doing, ask for support. That loop is magical. And as long as you're doing those things, you're golden.
The hardest part is gauging what is valuable. So like requesting his time. I feel the same way with with directors, with my manager. Like, I never think that what I have to say is probably as important as whatever else they need to deal with, and so it's really hard to know when do you have something worthwhile, especially if it's more around culture or like the way that strategy is being set or decisions that are being made on focus or goals. And so, like, I've heard some of what he said, and so I've been actively working to help speak back to the value we're providing to the rest of the organization. That's been something he's talked about in different ways. So I've been really speaking to that a lot to the team in the day to day, and I think it's starting to get some traction, which is really good. So I know that, like, from comments he's made, that's the right direction, and so I know I can always speak to that and make sure that I'm doing the right, saying the right things and, mapping back to his vision. But it is really hard to tell. I don't know. I never want to assume what I have to say is more important than, for your time. So
Well,
that's really difficult.
being respectful of people's time is good, like asking if they have time or when is a good time. But at the same time, I guess I would say if you're dedicated to the company, the new model, and I say new like for the last 20 years, the new model of leadership is to be a servant leader, which means we don't get anything done as leaders except by empowering our people. And so we're really hungry. Good leaders are hungry for people who want to do more and who want to contribute more. And with that in mind, I would say, and I see chat asking about this as well, leaders want people to talk to them. And not all the time, and sometimes they're busy, and they don't want to be nagged, so there is this balance. But the specific question I would put to you is, okay, why do you said you don't assume that what you have is more important. Why would you assume it's less important?
I would assume it's less important because I assume I have less of the big picture, and I'm probably just missing something that they already know.
Yeah, and that could be. And so there's some stuff you can do there. As hard as you're studying to improve, are you studying? I don't know how your company communicates, but there's one thing you can do is try to systematically plug yourself into the information flows. So whether that's press releases or internal mailing lists or wikis, I don't know how, like, well, let me just ask, since we're practicing asking questions, how does your company share information and can you plug into that more? And meanwhile, I'll mess with this.
I don't know if it's your microphone. I think it might be the Zoom because whenever
Okay.
there's other movement around either of our mics, it's happening.
Okay.
But,
I think it might be
so,
Zoom.
so how? That's a great question. How do we communicate ineffectively? Is probably the answer. The problem is that you can't be in every meeting all the time, and so what happens is a lot of information gets passed in individual meetings. So this person hears about this here, and then this person hears about it over here, and then these people are getting together, and now somebody else is out of the loop. Like for company-wide, bigger things, yeah, I can find out information for that, but for our specific area of the company, I don't know that there's anything necessarily being posted. You kind of just have to be able to be in the right meetings, I think.
Ugh.
I don't know. Maybe I can find out. Maybe I should look into it. Maybe there's another
Yeah.
way.
Well, that a great question, at least for you to think about, since you are so dedicated to helping with the culture, and that's now something you've been asked to do, is how does our organization communicate? Because all organizations have a formal communication and an informal communication, but trying to figure out like what is the formal communication and is it any good, or is the company completely dependent on friend networks and informal communication? And look, yeah, internal communication tools are poor. That's why we've had the rise of Slack. I see, by the way, that chat here hates Zoom, so maybe one day we'll talk about what else we could do that would be better. There is no perfect video conferencing. Anyway, but that's an aside. But I would try and figure out what. And you're right. Every time one of us moves, it echoes like crazy. We might try Discord next. I've heard that. Anyhow, trying to figure out those networks, the communication pattern, and then see if it can be improved. Does your company use Slack? Does it have another tool?
Well, we do use Slack right now, but we're probably not going to get to keep it because of rules. I don't know. Or costs, I'm not sure. We're probably going to be using maybe like Teams. We're not moving to Microsoft Teams pretty soon. So there's a lot of changes happening in our in the different platforms and apps that we're using. So I'm sure, like, we're kind of, I would say my team is the first one to beta that stuff. So it's kind of all over the place right now, and hopefully that will be unified a little bit more going forward. But it's not super clear at the moment.
It
I
seems
don't
like
know.
maybe
It's all over.
one of the viewers may be someone you know, if anybody knows you're here, because somebody says, "Wait, what's happening to Slack?" So you may have terrified them.
Yeah, who knows? I doubt. I'm not telling people that I'm on
Okay.
here because I don't want them watching
Yeah,
me.
all right. So maybe it's just someone who's curious. Anyway, moving on. Um, with the problem you raised, though, going all the way back to your original problem, because I think we ought to figure out some homework and let you shuffle off before it's too late there. Um, I think you're doing a lot, it sounds like the right things. There's a question of pace, there's engaging the leaders in what you're doing. You need to be killing your day job so that all the working with leaders doesn't detract from what they're expecting, because nothing is more disappointing to me as a leader than having someone come to me who's smart and engaged and then hearing from their boss, yeah, but they're not actually getting their work done. That's like crushing to me, because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, I thought I had a heroine and it turns out I have a problem. And that's horrible. But I think what you're doing, trying to learn what your management and team wants and then get their buy-in, works great. So try that.
Cool. Yeah. Easier said than done.
Yeah, no, well, we'll talk about this. I say a lot of times, and this is going to be another long-term lesson for all the listeners that you'll hear over and over from me, not just in this context. Some things are simple but not easy. So they can be simple concepts. They're not easy to make real. Um, but I did advise, you're relatively new at your company comparatively, as I recall, right? A few months to a year. So digging more into that culture and the background information makes you ask fewer dumb questions and go down fewer blind alleys, and also have more confidence that you understand enough to be worthy of asking for leader time and pushing for improvements. Probably a lot of those improvements you imagine, the leaders imagine too, but they're like, I have no time to think about postmortems. I have no time to think about how to facilitate people feeling more comfortable in the meetings. So, not all of them,
Yeah.
but some of them you'll actually find they're like, oh, I've really been wanting to work on that. Do you think you could blah, blah, blah? And the Leader Habit book, which you've mentioned you're reading, points out that there are these keystone habits. If you can make certain cultural changes, lots of things change after that. And you don't have to change everything to get one thing to change well. So if you change one thing, then other things will change around it. And so I would say, as you think of all these things in your workplace you want to change, you probably don't have to do all of them. So,
Yeah.
um, did that
No,
cover the topic enough?
that's a good point because I've been like really leveraging the tool of like impact mapping
Okay.
with the way that I think through decisions and goals and solutions. And I've been really pushing hard to stop trying to develop every feature when, you know, you have this goal in mind. Like, let's figure out how we get to that goal and then decide if we want to reinvest those dollars into something else. I'm not doing that necessarily in this other realm, and maybe if I focused on it or drew it out, you know, whiteboard, that's what I like to do. That might help me a little bit with that. So
Have you heard? I'm sure you've heard it called the 80-20 rule. Do you know it by its more formal name, the Pareto principle?
I didn't know the
Yeah.
formal name. No.
Yeah. So Pareto, I guess, was an Italian economist. The point is, he figured out the 80-20 rule. And that's really what you're looking for here, which is what 20% of all the changes I can imagine in our culture might have 80% of the impact. What are the biggest opportunities? What are the biggest needs? And I think if you try that, uh, that would be thinking about that. Yeah, and you have a tool for it,
Yeah.
impact mapping. I would, maybe your homework would be to
It's
impact
make an
map,
impact map.
impact map.
Oh, that's so fun! I love impact maps.
Well, there,
Yeah, maybe I can make one and then I'll give it to you and you can put it on the screen and let
yeah,
me
I
pick
could.
it apart.
That would be fantastic, right? That would be good for me and good for you. I get to see your work in progress, and I think it's relevant. Like, you know the tool better than I do, but you could impact map both the culture or the changes you have in mind. You could also think about your own impact. Like, really, 80% of your time, I'm going to change the definition of 80/20 for a second. Um, but 80% of your time could go in, should go into your day job. That only leaves you 20% to put in to changing the world to be the way you want it to be, at least at first. And so, how are you going to get all that impact? So, there's a couple ways you could slice it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try to figure out what the best approach is on whether it's more towards what I want to do there or more in my role.
Right.
But yeah, but luckily, a lot of the things that I want to do with culture happen to also be goals for like the whole IT department.
Oh,
Um,
good. Well, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
so that really helps a lot because they recognized from the people up top who recognize the need for this, for a growth mindset, for creating a culture of trust. And so they are like, there's a whole advisory council that's going to be associate led that our CIO is going to be a part of monthly that I'm applying for. I knew I couldn't do that and be on a diversity and inclusion council, so I talked to my people at the diversity and inclusion. I said, hey, we really should make sure our goal, like, we have really similar things going on as what's about to kick off. So can I dock in there and not own any of the stuff here, but be the liaison between the two, make sure that we're not double work, doing double work. So that's the path I'm going to try to go. We'll see if I get into that. But yeah, so there I am trying to take on something else, but I recognize that I can't do all of it. So
Good.
I've worked my way out to try to be kind of a little bit in both.
And I do that a lot. I love a double, right, where you get double duty. So Hephaestus in chat says something good. He says, I think about it from Gary Keller, and he's got a quote here. What is the one thing I can do that makes everything else easier or unnecessary? And I think that's calling your shots a little bit and only doing a few of the highest impact things. That's also, see, that both increases your impact and the stuff you want to do with leaders, and it solves the other problem you were asking about, which is how do I test the things I want to do without overwhelming people or doing too much? And so some of it, there's a bunch of stuff here I think that's good for you, which is prioritizing all the work you're doing and all the change you want to see. And remember, a few wins will really establish your credibility to do more. And unfortunately, a few losses will be remembered. And so, since you're relatively new, it is definitely better 1 or 2 clear victories than 4 or 5 ambiguous involvements. Like, that's true for everyone, but it counts double when you're new.
Yeah.
All right, so how do you feel? How do you feel? We could call that more or less a wrap. You've got new homework. We've had a good talk. You're super transparent, well prepared. We didn't get to your last optional topic, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's why it was optional. No
All
big
right.
deal.
Perfect. And I don't know as I'll have any follow up with you in the middle of the month, but as always, if you have questions, shoot them to me, or if you want something in the middle, and if I have ideas for you, I will send them to you. Chat, anything else we should ask Kristin or prompt her about, or last minute advice? Because I love this quote you've all heard from me before, which is, none of us is as smart as all of us. So sure, I've been coaching her, but you all probably have great ideas that I haven't mentioned, and she'll at least look at this part of the stream to see what comes up. And the other thing I will say, I'll follow up with Shadow, and we'll switch. We'll look at different audio. I do think it's something about when you move, it causes in this case, but we'll look at doing Discord in the future. I'll test it to see if that's. I'll test it with Mugendra, so you won't have to be the guinea pig.
I thought maybe somebody just didn't like your Italian hands.
Yeah, well,
don't want us to be moving.
yeah. So the other thing I'll say for everybody listening is we have a really good show coming on Wednesday, 6 p.m. I'll leave work early so I can be on earlier. And I'm going to try to cover an impossible topic. And I went ahead and put myself out there of the secret to doing what you love. So how do you move to where you're doing what you're really passionate about or what you think will fit you? And that's, 6 PST. And that's, I made the bold sort of clickbait claim, the secret. And so now I have to have a secret. So I will do my best to have the insightful secret. I've been thinking about it and discussing it with my network of advisors and coaches. And I think I have some really good insights. So I'm looking forward to that. Kristin, I appreciate you being here and being so transparent and engaged. And I appreciate all of chat, minus the one doofus we had to ban, for being here with us and having a good show. And one banning per show is about Twitch average, I'd say. So that's awesome. Let's see. I'm interested for Wednesday. Yeah, we'll have a good show then. So, Kristin, we'll see you back here live in a month, plus or minus. And keep up the homework. Get your 20 or 50 reps in, your first 20, and then keep going.
Sounds good.
Anything else? All right. Thank you all tonight for all you've done. I love having everybody here, the great supportive community. We will sign off. And I will see you all back here in just 45 hours for the secret to getting to do exactly what you want. And I will have show and tell for that. So I'll be holding up my props right here. And we'll have some show and tell as well as some discussion. Shout out to my mods and to Awesome Dave, who's here. Awesome Dave is trying desperately to fix our broken Q&A widget. We've actually got Twitch Tech, my own group I used to run, stumped at the moment, so that's a new one. So anyway, but enough goodbyes. Anything else I wanted to say? No, we're all prepared. So Kristin, stay on for a sec. I'll say goodbye to you. And for everybody on chat, cheers. See you soon. See you in 46 hours.